Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest Bach conductors. Now, of course, conductors didn't really exist in Bach's day, at least not the way we know them now, although Bach was certainly one. I mean, he played the keyboard and conducted. His music in the larger pieces, the St. Matthew Passion, the B minor Mass, which was never performed in its entirety in Bach's lifetime, of course, those pieces really require somebody to take control and tell everybody what to do. So, the Bach conductor is a modern invention. And there have been some absolutely marvelous ones. And here are my top 5. Number 1, Karl Richter. Oh, yes, I love Karl Richter. It's so funny. He sort of began, or was in at the beginning of the modern Bach revival, not the Mendelssohnian Bach revival. I mean the one that really started to dig into his choral works in extenso. He did a huge sequence of cantatas, all the major choral works and all the major instrumental pieces, orchestral pieces. He was an amazing organist. And he really had a feeling, I think, for the majesty and grandeur of Bach's writing, because he wasn't one of those period instrument, let's keep it teeny, teensy, tiny kind of guys. Well, he wasn't really a period instrument guy at all. But the fact of the matter is that he was interested in authentic performance techniques. He was perfectly willing to, exploit them on modern instruments. He just had this wonderful, wonderful feel for the architecture of these pieces. I mean, his B minor Mass is incomparable. He got fabulous soloists for the Passions and other things. Just a really wonderful musician. And it's interesting because when he conducted later music, he was just awful, as often as not. I mean, if you have the big Richter box, and I do, as soon as he got out of the Baroque period, he ran into trouble. He really did. But when he was in his element, he was amazing. And so he's definitely in the Bach pantheon. Next, Nikolaus Harnoncourt. Well, Harnoncourt, of course, was the period instrument pioneer with Gustav Leonhardt. He did the first complete cycle of all the Bach cantatas. Some of you may say, well, Leonhardt should be on the list. I don't think so. I think Leonhardt was much more of a performer keyboardist than a conductor. But Harnoncourt, he could be bizarre. He had these strange theories of musical rhetoric that he would inflict on the music. And he managed to do most of his Bach multiple times. The B minor Mass, the Brandenburg concertos, the Passions and things. With the Arnold Schoenberg Choir, which was a wonderful group. And the Concertus Musicus Wien, his own group. Still, for all of his eccentricities, he was least perverse, I think, on the whole, when he was doing Bach as opposed to later music. And beyond that, I think he really had a way of making us think about the music anew, whether it was the timbre of the period instruments or whether it was just his approach, his handling of tempo and phrasing particularly, and there was a graphic quality to his conducting. He made the music speak, and he was just a force, an incredibly important force in our understanding of Bach in the second half of the 20th century. And following his career, you could follow the evolution of the period instrument movement from sort of experimental and creaky to fully professional and extremely masterful and able to do anything he wanted to do. And that's when we realized he wasn't so much a Bach conductor as just a terrific conductor doing interesting things with Bach. But Bach was his canvas initially. So Harnoncourt certainly belongs there. Philippe Herreweghe. Now, Herreweghe, he doesn't often pop up on lists, I think, but I really think his Bach is extraordinarily beautiful. He put some of the warmth back into the period instrument movement instead of this sort of steely, cold, metronomic, I think you know what I'm talking about. The instruments with this gaunt, unpleasantly harsh sonority. Herreweghe wasn't like that. His St. Matthew Passion, his first recording of it, because he did it a couple times, was absolutely a revelation in just how beautiful a period instrument performance could sound. Beautiful on its own terms, with some, honeyed textures and mellow sounds. I think his Bach is extremely important for being so different from what was generally being offered, especially from the crews in Germany and England. He had this human, lyrical quality to everything that he did, which always just goes to show you that it's not the instruments that matter so much. It's how they're played and who the interpreters are and what they bring to the party. Herreweghe was a gentle soul by and large, or is a gentle soul. He's not one of those in-your-face, shock you with these stunningly edgy, strange sounds coming out of his ensemble. He wanted the instruments to serve the music, and they do. And I think his Bach is a wonderful example of that, and it has endured as a result. Next, Jos Van Veldhoven. I don't know if I pronounced that right, and I don't care. Jos Van Veldhoven is the head of the Netherlands Bach Society, and he did all the major Bach choral works on Channel Classics. And I think this is one of the great series of Bach recordings ever made. I really do. And, he's one of those conductors who kind of fades into the background. He doesn't make a point of being a mega personality or an epic star. He just delivers stunning, fabulous musical results, time after time. And they are absolutely glorious recordings of the major Bach choral works. And I do think we have to do something that features the Netherlands, which is, is a hotbed of the period instrument movement and, of course, of Bach performance. There's the Koopmans and the Kuykens and Leonhardt and all those people who spend most of their time working in and around the Netherlands. It's an amazing tradition. But I think the finest exemplar of that tradition, the person who's delivered the best results consistently over time, has been Jos Van Veldhoven. So, great stuff. Absolutely great stuff. And last but not least, Masaaki Suzuki. He's now done, almost all of Bach, all by himself, or lots of it. He's done the major instrumental and orchestral pieces. He's done all the choral works, all the vocal music with the Japan Bach Collegium. I remember vividly when Robert von Bahr at BIS said to me he was going to be doing the complete Bach cantatas in Japan. And I was surprised, of course, because I had no idea what the tradition of Bach performance was in Japan. And I know a lot of people were saying the usual crap about how, oh, goodness, those Japanese, they're cold, they're unemotional, they just copy Western things, they don't know what they're doing. And, of course, it's total nonsense, because what matters is how you're trained and where you're trained, not where you're born and, whether you like octopus-flavored junk food. And the fact of the matter is, I happen to like octopus-flavored junk food. So there you go. Suzuki proved that, of course, Bach, the tradition of Bach performance on period instruments was as strong and vibrant in Japan as it was anywhere else in the universe. And he created Bach editions of Bach's work, which are absolutely second to none. Some would argue that they're the finest available today. I wouldn't argue with them if they did, especially his cantata cycle. He, of course, chose excellent soloists. One of the things that's actually been a blessing in the world of Bach performance is that Bach attracts the best players, because his music requires that. It requires virtuosity, it requires taste, it requires culture, it requires all of the fundamental musical values, because it's just such great music, and it encourages that. And so singers like to sing it and players like to play it, and they do their best. They take the job seriously, and Suzuki really took the job seriously. He knew, I think, that he had something to prove, and he proved it. So those are my 5 greatest Bach conductors. I'm sure that you will have some of your own. And, well, let's see how it all shakes out. Just make a list of 5. Your own list of 5. None of those, well, I would take out this one from your list and put in that one. Just give me your list. That's all you have to do. It's easy. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.